As a parent, you want to do everything you can to protect your child. But what do you do when the school system you trust to watch over them fails to protect them? That question isn't hypothetical for today's guests. It's personal. When Christa Ramey found herself stepping in to protect her own daughter from bullying, it exposed something deeper. A gap in protection, in accountability, and in justice for families who felt completely powerless. What started as a mother's fight quickly became something much bigger, as parents across Southern California began reaching out for help. But Christa's story doesn't start there. It traces back to a tragedy in her own family, a loss that planted the seed for a life in the law, and ultimately, a calling. Today, she stands at the forefront of advocating for children who've been harmed, holding institutions accountable, and proving that even in the most difficult moments, we are not powerless. This is a conversation about turning pain into purpose and choosing to stand up when it matters most. Christa, thank you so much for making your way over to the Inland Empire. Thanks. And welcome to Art of Purpose.
Thank you so much for having me. It's not that bad of a drive. A little windy today, but we're good.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And to all our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm really excited about today's conversation. Please share with your friends, with your family. This is going to be a value add to their lives. So really looking forward to getting into this. All right, Christa, I do want to sort of get going right away. This idea about, what do you do when the system that exists to protect and your child fails them? I want you to take us back to the moment, not as a lawyer, right, but as a mother. You were experiencing a bullying situation with your daughter that sort of became the jumping off point for what you do today as a focus in your practice. Can you talk to us about the situation? What happened? What was going on with the family, with your daughter, and what were you feeling?
Yeah, so it's funny because I now have a verdict against this school district, awesome. But not in my daughter's case. So, it seems so trivial because it's not, it wouldn't have ever been a case, but it was, cheer. And, not like the Texas cheer mom stories that you hear, but, things got a little out of control, with a couple of girls on her cheer squad. She ended up not cheering her senior year because several of the girls ended up dropping off the team. But it was enough where, there's parent meetings with the principal, and it was a big deal. And it was interesting because Kathleen called, she pointed me out, call on my stepmom. She's a lawyer. She needs to talk, and I was like, what do you want me to say right now in this moment? And, so I, of course, vocalized my concerns about what was happening. Mm-hmm. But it was, I think it brought awareness to me because, having grown up, I'm Gen X, having grown up in the 80s, it was, school ground fights, whatever, boys will be boys. That's just not acceptable. And it should have never been acceptable. Yeah. And I think what, I began to become more aware of out of that process was more of the stories that were going on, the suicides that were happening, the school shootings that were happening. A lot of these stories began like in schoolyards over boys, over, over like petty little disagreements that schools probably ignored and didn't think were that serious. And then they expanded. And so I thought, I'm going to write a blog post for my website. And I started getting calls from that one blog post. And, you have a website, one blog post really doesn't generate a lot of business generally. It's over time more and more do. But it really was something that I realized was more of an epidemic than I thought. And not a lot of lawyers taking these cases and knowing how to work them. So it kind of developed into that.
Yeah, and what going through that experience with your daughter, and I can also appreciate, I think when you said, looking back on it, you feel like, hey, maybe it wasn't the biggest situation, but as a parent, it definitely is, because that is so important with what's going on with your daughter, with your family, and it really is the biggest thing in the world at that time, right? But what did you learn through that experience also in terms of what parents are feeling when there is a bullying situation, whether it's frustration, fear, lack of knowledge about where to go, what to do? How did that experience help you sort of understand and also connect with parents that you'd be helping in the future and families?
Yeah, well, learning how to navigate that process, exactly that, knowing what to do, and how to get your voice heard. Because I think that that's one of the common things that I hear from parents that call me is that, well, I've made these calls, I've done these things, and nothing's happening. And knowing that that's not really what you need to be doing. Here's what you need to be doing. And, schools' websites are actually a great resource because California requires that you post certain things and how to get certain information on their websites. And, just going onto a school district's website alone can really help a parent a lot. But it's about putting things in writing, and it's about following up and making sure that your voice is heard. Some things are not, are more like my daughter's cheer situation. They're not a lawsuit. They're things you need to resolve. And they are a big deal. You're right. 100%. But they can be resolved. But things like what happened with my daughter's cheer team in that moment could have spiraled out of control if the school allowed it to. Fortunately, it didn't. But I see situations all the time where they start out small, and because the school doesn't take it seriously or doesn't take a parent seriously, then they spiral out of control. So it's about relearning how to, it's not picking up the phone anymore. It's about filling out a form now. It's about sending the emails. It's about following up and making sure that everything is documented, because if it's documented, then the school is seeing it again and again. Okay. I believe, the bottom of my heart, everyone goes into education, does it for the right reasons. My daughter is now an elementary school teacher. Oh, my mom was a school teacher, so I come from a family of educators. There's a lot of educators in my family.
And that matters to you.
Totally does. It's about making the schools better, and holding them accountable does make them better.
Yeah. And, I think a lot of people could also, there's people on, all sides or all places, points on the spectrum about, holding schools accountable, or, how much we can hold them accountable. Obviously, as plaintiff attorneys, we look at it a certain way, and we want to keep people safe, children safe. When you're talking about the importance of holding schools accountable, there is that idea of boys will be boys, kids are kids, and you can't control everything. How do you address that conversation with people as well? And a lot of sometimes that conversation, obviously, let's say with respect to the law, it might be in a trial where you're trying to convince a jury. But how do you address that with folks that, yes, it is a school. Yes, you have to send our kids there, and there's a lot of responsibility on their shoulders already. But you can't just say, just because they have a lot of responsibility, we're going to let them, not pay attention to certain things.
Yeah, and when you think about it, in California, across the country, really, education is compulsory. You're required to send your child to school.
Right.
And schools have two jobs, not just to teach your children, which is, of course, their job, but their first job, their most important job, their most sacred job is to keep your child safe. And it goes back to even just like Maslow's pyramid of needs. Like when you think about the hierarchy of needs in life, it starts out with the very basis of that whole pyramid. That foundation is safety. If you're not safe, there is nothing that can become accomplished after that. You can't think, you can't function. And in order to learn, you have to have a safe environment to do that. And so I think that it's about understanding that. And I think that if you don't teach a child that what they're doing is wrong, they're not going to learn that it's wrong. So when you say, oh, well, this was all over a boy, these girls will get over it, girls will be girls, and then it escalates and escalates, and you're not teaching the girls that are doing the bad behavior, that what they're doing is bad, they're not learning that it's bad. They're learning that it's acceptable and that it's just girls being girls, and petty differences will work themselves out. So the schools have to teach them that that is wrong conduct. And that is how I frame it to juries too, that these children that did the bad thing, a lot of times my clients, by the time we get to trial, have forgiven the kid because they didn't know the right from the wrong. But the school did, their teachers did, the administrators did, and they didn't stop it.
Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a great way of looking at it, in the appropriate way of looking at it, right? Where it's like, yes, safety is of paramount importance, and it is a legal duty that the schools have, right? And safety as a base, as a foundation to allow for learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about it, there's stories as recently as this morning when I was getting ready and watching, the morning news. There was a story about It's a girl in LAUSD that was hit with one of these metal water bottles.
Oh, yeah.
And she died from a brain hemorrhage. And this was over bullying incidents that were occurring on an LAUSD campus again and again and again. And when a water bottle like that gets thrown at a kid's head, there are real consequences to this. This isn't just a kid's feelings getting hurt. These are real life consequences. And in that particular instance, a child died because of unchecked bullying. So, we need to really think about these things very seriously.
Yeah. And one of the things that happened from that blog post, you said people started reaching out. Yeah. One thing, for our listeners, I definitely want to encourage you, go check out Christa's social media on TikTok or YouTube. She does an amazing job of getting information out there and, letting people know that there's someone there for them to help them. And, not all attorneys are doing that. And I think it's something so important. But, how is it that, a blog post then turns into people reaching out, and then how do you take that into, actually I'm gonna start posting on TikTok, and letting, bringing folks into sort of my atmosphere, my world that way?
Well, I didn't even know TikTok existed until the pandemic.
Yeah.
And, people will send me these little dancing dog videos or whatever. And I'm seeing other lawyers on it. And I was doing it at that time, and I still do now, a lot of true crime, a bit of a true crime junkie. And I do a lot of, legal guest analyst work for Law and Crime Network, for Court TV. And there was other lawyers that were posting on TikTok. I'm like, that is so smart because people watch, like they scroll pretty virally, particularly now during the pandemic, and even now. And it's a good way to get information out to people. And so it kind of just started as, well, let me just hold my phone and, talk to it. And it's so awkward at first. But then I start planning posts. I'm like, well, there's things that need to be said or things that I've learned in a case where a parent went wrong or what a parent did right. And I'm thinking, we need to, get this information out there. And it's crazy because I get a lot of direct messages and emails that come from those posts. I've actually gotten cases from those posts. So I'm getting information out, and that's great because hopefully it will help parents learn like how to navigate systems that are pretty complicated and bureaucratic by their very nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it sounds, like what you uncovered wasn't just an individual or individual situations, but a much bigger gap in the system. At what point did it go from personal to purpose to a mission?
Yeah, it's interesting because at first, the first case I took to trial, I think it was in maybe 2017 or 2018, and it was against La Puente School District, and east of Los Angeles, and it got a verdict. It was a very good verdict, and it was kind of like, wow, there's a gap. People aren't taking these cases, and they're not taking them to trial, and they're settling for less than I think that they should settle for. So I think that I need to be trying these cases more. And there were other firms that were taking some of these cases, but they were taking the monster cases. And I'm like, I'll take their scraps right now. Because there's a lot of people that I think are undervaluing these cases, and they're getting rid of them or disposing them or not taking them. And I think that that's doing a big disservice to the community. And so I just started, using taglines of that's what I'm doing now. It's bullying, abuse, hazing. And I'm going to take these, and I do all kinds of school negligence cases in addition, like sports injuries and that, but really focus on helping kids. Let's just make this, there are car accident attorneys in this town are a dime a dozen, and it's not to discount what they do because it's important work. There are med mal attorneys galore. I really found that this was something that was important to me as a parent, as a lawyer, as a woman in this profession, and someone who just naturally just loves to be around kids. And so I'm like, I'm going to really just try to focus here. And now I don't have any of those other kinds of PI cases. Now this is exclusively what I do.
Yeah. And I love that too. Also from a mission standpoint, is something that connected with you personally that turned into, something that you do in practice and just kind of help everybody as your purpose. But then also you touched on something that's important as well from a practice standpoint, there's the practice of law and then there's a business of law as well, is a way to distinguish yourself, right? And I think, we have, young attorneys listening to our podcast, as well as, folks, kids in law school, and people in different stages of their career in different industries that, are also wanting to turn their passions into a business, and being able to create a niche for yourself was so great, right? Because now, yes, when I think of a bullying instance, I'm thinking Christa, right? You're thinking about a situation in school, you're thinking Christa because I know Christa does this type of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that is intentional, obviously. And there's that old expression, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Well, we work our butts off as lawyers, let's be real. And this work is hard. But when you have work with a purpose, then it makes it those long hours worthwhile. And so, yes, you're working a lot doing what you love, but it does mean something and it has so much value. So I'm glad I found it. And I think that if you're doing areas of the law that are boring to you or that aren't interesting, you're gonna burn out.
Yeah.
Because we do work a lot of hours.
100%.
And we have time away from our families. When we're in trial, that's it. It's a single focus. It's our clients. It's like walking on a high wire without a net. It's exciting, but it's scary. And we need to be able to do it in an area that we love doing it in. Otherwise, you're going to burn out.
Yeah. You mentioned that you love working with children, right? When I think of you, I'm like, yeah, of course, Chris would be great working with children. There's some people who can interact well with children, some folks who don't, right? What is it that you love so much about helping children out? I grew up, I have 3 little siblings. When I was growing up, the next closest in age to me is 5, and then it's like 8 and 9. So like, I feel like I've always been good with kids as well. Like I love being around kids. There's this like innocence and beauty that they bring out in life, right? But what is it that you love about working with kids and helping kids who've gone through difficult situations?
They genuinely appreciate what you're doing. They look at you. Well, one, they think it's really cool that they have a lawyer.
Yeah.
Right. So immediately you got cool points. One of the first things I always tell the kids and the parents too, that their parents are hiring me to work for the kid.
Yeah.
I don't work. I have to answer to the parents, obviously. But kids will tell me things they won't tell their parents, and they need to know that they're not going to get in trouble, and that I'm not going to share everything that they tell me with their parents unless they're in danger. And I don't know. People have always been able to talk to me, but kids in particular, I don't know why, but
open up.
Yeah, maybe it's because my mom was a teacher. I don't know.
Yeah.
But she taught high school. High school kids are scary. But I represent a lot of them. But they're still scary. But the little ones are the ones that I really enjoy helping. But most of the cases are like middle school and high school. And I don't know. I just always have been. Maybe I just never grew up that way. Maybe that's a little Peter Pan in me or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting you mentioned that as well. Like, is your family, having teachers, and now your daughter's also a teacher. It's like, yeah, there's this way of connecting with children that maybe some other folks didn't necessarily grow up around, right? And
I want schools to be great places. I think about it this way too: is that because of lawsuits, things get safer. Cars are safer because of lawsuits. We would have gas tanks in the back of the cars when we got rear-ended; they'd explode if it wasn't for lawsuits. Hospitals are safer because of lawsuits. I really think that these cases are important because it does make schools safer.
I think that's such a great point, Christa, because, one could look at it, someone who doesn't know, and go, oh, Christa doesn't like school. She's against sort of like the school system, wants to sort of bankrupt them. And that's not what it is at all. It's actually, and can you speak to that? Because I think that matters. Because it's about you wanting to make it safer and better, because education and the correct atmosphere for children matters so much to you. And that goes back to plaintiff attorneys and what we do. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think now more than ever, this is a very important point, because a lot of times, lawyers are vilified, that it's just out for the buck and trying to put people out of business. I wish LAUSD would put me out of business. Yeah. I really do. Make me do something else. Because if schools stop hiring pedophiles, if they stop, hiring bad teachers, if they stop allowing situations to fester, if they stop keeping administrators employed that should not be administrators,
Covering over things. Yeah.
exactly, moving people around, covering up bad conduct, if they stop doing that and they start actually correcting the things that they need to correct, then there's less for me to do.
Yeah.
So it's about highlighting this. And it's interesting because when you dive into litigation, a lot of times you realize everything that they don't know. They maybe understand what the definition of bullying is, but they don't know what they're supposed to do when a parent comes to them. Or if there is a written complaint filed, what the next step is. They don't know. And I don't think that it's because, they don't care. I think it's just that sometimes the people are paralyzed in fear when they're faced with certain situations. So it's better training and it's, better administration.
Yeah.
Is the work that they need to do.
Yeah. And just, you're giving this example of like teachers and administrators themselves don't know what to do. How much less do parents know what to do in those situations, right? So can you help us sort of understand why this is such a difficult area for families to navigate when it comes to bullying, when it comes to potential sexual abuse, and like why is it such a difficult area for families to navigate?
Particularly when it comes to, I think when it comes to sexual abuse in particular, I think that a lot of times the kids feel like shame to speak up. So a lot of times they think they're just going to handle the problems themselves. So if they're being bullied or if there's some grooming happening and maybe someone's spending a little too much time with them, they get awkward about it. Maybe they think that, oh, this is going to go away, or if I tell my mom, I'm going to get in trouble, or I don't want to get that kid in trouble because then I'll be known as a snitch, and it's going to get me in more trouble. So I think a lot of times kids keep things in for way too long. And, I think that what we need to do more as parents is, think less about punishing your children when they come to talk to you. First things first, you're a parent, but you have to allow them to know that when they come to you with something big, they're not in trouble. You never say to your daughter, well, what were you wearing? Or to your son, what did you say to him first? You really need to make sure that you're listening to your children and that you're then giving all of that information to the school. If you can't get it from your child, then where are you? Yeah. So your children can never be in fear of telling you what's happening to them. And I think oftentimes kids are just keeping a lot of this in for a period of time that does allow a problem to grow.
Yeah, and that's very helpful to know for families as well, because I think, I think parents do want to protect their children, do want the best for them, but sometimes may not have the tools or the correct know the correct way of being able to be a help in those moments, because maybe they didn't have that growing up, right? So yeah, different
generations deal with things differently too.
I also heard you talk about, because I know you've represented many like special needs young students, and why are special needs students particularly vulnerable in these situations?
Well, we just mentioned about how children keep things in and don't talk. A lot of, I've had many clients that are on the spectrum to the point where they're nonverbal. I think that a lot of people think that when something bad happens to these kids and they can't verbally express it, well, how do you even know that they're harmed?
Yeah.
And I think that makes me want to help. Yeah. And to not be able to vocalize what you're experiencing. And I think that makes me want to help them more. Yeah. Those are the kids that really get, kind of the brunt of things. I think, the school bullies think that, well, who are they going to tell? Or the abusive teacher, who are they going to tell? So those particular children are very vulnerable and really do need, the extra protection from all of us, And so even, children that are going to schools, they need to know that those are the kids to stand up for, is the kids that are getting picked on because they, are different than the rest of us.
What do you think more attorneys aren't necessarily doing this type of work, and like challenges from a sort of practice and legal side?
These are hard cases.
Yeah, no, and I want you, because you do hard work.
Yeah,
right?
These are not, my cases involve, because there's a lot of privacy protections involved with children. So I can't just send out discovery and get all the information I have to file motions, and it's not because, well, I mean, sure, the defense probably doesn't want to give me everything that I'm asking for, but they also have federal and state laws that prohibit them from disclosing information about kids, and rightfully so. They can't share information about another child's discipline without a court order telling them that they need to do it. So one, you have a lot of law in motion that happens in these cases.
By the way, just for our listeners who may not necessarily be savvy here, right? We, when a lawsuit gets filed, every side has an opportunity to, ask questions of the other side or make requests for certain documents and information. Typically, you would expect to send those request information to be given to you by the other side. Doesn't always happen, but that's generally the rule and the expectation. But what Christa's sort of describing here is that there's another layer beyond that when it comes to these types of cases, because they're already not going to give that information because it involves minors.
Yeah.
Right. So she has to go additional steps and file motions and get a court order. And that it requires additional work, additional time, additional expense that goes beyond what a typical case would already be.
Yeah. And so you think about when you're looking at the life of a case and what's involved, there's that written discovery, and then there's like oral depositions that take place where we get to question witnesses. That part of the case can't really even begin until I get all of that paper information, which is tied up until a judge rules. And sometimes in courts these days, that can take a long time.
Yeah, months.
And then after that, most of my cases follows a summary judgment, which is where the defense comes in and says, you got no case.
Kick this out.
And so that adds another layer. So there's a lot of work involved in these cases that I think, other areas of law just don't involve this level of work. Some areas do, but they're just hard cases. They cost a lot of money. They're expert driven. There's psychologists, there's school experts. There's, sometimes there's like brain injuries. There's neurologists. There's all sorts of complications that come with expert heavy work. So I think more people don't take them because they're not easy.
Yeah.
I don't mind hard though.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're dealing with a defendant that already has built-in immunities in many situations. Yeah,
absolutely. Another layer.
Yeah. So thank you for the work that you do and for protecting our children and community. I do want to zoom out and for a second here, because this work feels very aligned with who you are. You've shared that your journey into law, and I've heard you talk about this in the past, was shaped by a tragedy in your own family. Can you take us back to that and talk to us a little bit about that and how I know you've described this as your origin, really, for becoming an attorney. And I also know that it's a very sensitive subject, so I do want to give you the space for that.
It's interesting. I think that many years ago it was much more difficult for me to talk about, but now I do talk about it a lot more, and I think that I do is because I did learn something about myself from it. I also think that a lot of lawyers have origin stories, kind of like superheroes do, right?
Yeah.
And what propelled me into the law happened almost 40 years ago today. We're talking today on April 3rd, 4th? What is today?
Yeah,
3rd.
Today is the 3rd.
And March 31st, 1986, my aunt was killed in her home in Scripps Ranch in the San Diego area. And she was killed at 5 a.m., opened the door probably to someone she knew, and was shot 3 times. And to this day, her killer has not been brought to justice. In fact, last night, a cold case segment was aired on a program in San Diego about her death and about her unsolved murder. And I think that it taught, at young age taught me a lot. One, I think it reaffirmed that I do not believe in the death penalty under any circumstance because of the hate that grew within me in those moments. I think I turned to God a lot more. And in my faith, that is not something that we do. You don't put someone to death. And I knew that because I wanted to kill whoever did this to my aunt, to my dad, and to my grandparents, to my family. And that hate in you is something you have to expel. And I thought that the only way I could really do that righteously was to become a district attorney and to put bad guys away. And so that was my like drive, is that I got to get my act together. I'm having too much fun in high school. I need to get more serious, and I'm going to go to law school.
Wow.
And it's funny, one of my, like looking back, I think a lot of people thought, yeah, Chris, you're going to go to law school? And, maybe didn't believe that I had that in me. And I was working at the DA's office when I was in law school. I was a certified extern. And they were not hiring. There was a hiring freeze. And so as it turned out, I didn't start to work I didn't get that first job as a lawyer at the DA's office, but I was doing plaintiff's personal injury work for a big, well-known law firm in Los Angeles. And I recognized that I was on the same side of the V.
Yeah.
And I had people, in some cases, that were victims of crimes, survivors of something really, really bad. And I'm like, well, okay, well, maybe this is my purpose. Maybe this will satisfy that. And if it doesn't, the DA's office is not going to be hiring freezed forever.
Right.
And so I can always move over there laterally. So I've only been on the P side of the V.
Yeah. Your entire career.
Yeah.
And you were 16, you said,
Yeah.
when that happened. How that completely changes, like internally, you make this decision to then, hey, like I want to, have justice done and put bad guys away. You said that your family might kind of, hey, that maybe might not have made sense. Chris is going to become an attorney. What is it that throughout that period for you that, you believed and you wanted to do that, and that you said, hey, because I think sometimes folks might be grappling with what to do next. Maybe they have an idea of like, hey, I'd like to be that. I don't know if I have the skills for that, but like I want to choose this profession, whether it's being an attorney or something else. For you, in terms of like, was it self-belief? Was it more purpose-driven that was driving you? Was it more, what was it that was driving you through that?
I think that it was something that I knew I could do. And I think that as a girl growing up in Dallas, I think that, I was like, I always thought I'd be in fashion or, I really, saw myself managing or owning a clothing store chain or something.
Yeah.
That's really what I thought I was going to do. And
which now everything makes sense, right? You're very fashionable.
but so I do love fashion.
Yeah.
But I also knew I was smart because I wanted to, I knew I had to go to school to do that. It wasn't something that, I wasn't going to work at the Gap or something like that. Not that that's wrong, but I knew that I wanted to be in business, right? And I knew I like to read. I like to write. My mom's an English teacher. I have all these examples around me of smart people. No one in my family had gone to law school.
I love that.
So, and my mom was actually, she went to college after like I was in high school.
Oh, wow.
And first became a social worker and then moved into education.
Wow.
So, I had her kind of at the same time diving into school. I think maybe that played a role as well. I haven't really thought about it in that way, but maybe that played a role in my mom more than I think,
Yeah.
But I knew I could do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And growing up, in Dallas, when you look back, how did growing up in Dallas shape you? That laugh, I love.
Well, it made me realize I didn't want to move back to Dallas because North Texas weather is brutal.
Yeah.
I love my home state in all seriousness. But it shaped me in many ways, I guess. I'm rooted in family values. I have a lot of love for the Dallas Cowboys. I love football in general. And one of the things when I first moved to California, in Los Angeles, there was no football team. And I felt like there was something missing in Los Angeles. Like there's no sense of community. There's not, and it's because there's no football team. I was convinced of this. Yeah. Then I found the Dodgers, so I'm good.
Yeah.
There is a big sense of, there's community. I think that growing up in Texas, just, I don't know, maybe makes me a little bit, I have that more of an edge of roundedness that some people don't have, with sports and outdoors and that kind of stuff. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it shaped me that much though. Big hair, higher the hair, closer to God.
There you go. You mentioned something interesting as well that I wanted you to talk about now that you mentioned it, is that I think a lot of times people associate plaintiff attorneys with being a little bit more closely aligned with public defenders, and district attorneys more closely aligned with like civil defense attorneys. Like that sort of seems to be a prevailing thought for me, because similar to you, I initially wanted to be a district attorney. Started working at a plaintiff's firm in law school, and I was like, hey, like this is what I want to do.
A similar path.
But it seemed this, like in my mind, it's like I'm still representing the people that were, the victims here, the family of the victims. It seems to me like I'm on the same side. I don't know if you kind of run into that as well, and you're like, how does that not connect?
I do, and I recently had it come up again, and it really blows my mind because I'm not aligned with. I mean, look, I think that becoming a public defender and representing people on the criminal defense side is righteous work. It's hard work.
Absolutely.
But you're representing, for the most part, criminals, people that hurt our clients. I want to put the person that molests children in jail, as well as to make their employer that allowed it to happen under their watch pay. I don't feel like it's the same side of the V to me. It doesn't make sense to me. Someone who, commits domestic violence is not the same. Someone who drives a car drunk and hits one of our clients, that's not the same side of the V. We want to put that person away. We don't want to get that person off. So, and you want that person to be held accountable for their, and so what we do as plaintiff's attorneys, I believe very firmly, is to make sure everyone is held accountable for their conduct. And sometimes that it coincides where there's both a criminal and a civil case. A lot of my cases, that's true.
Yeah.
I work as Marcy's law counsel then talk to the DAs and make sure that my clients' voices are heard on the criminal side. So it always blew my mind. I was like, how is that?
Yeah.
Maybe there's a police element to that. So, in LA, there's been a long storied history of unfortunate police misconduct that still exists to this day. But in the past, there was a series of district attorneys that were not prosecuting these cases as seriously as they should. So maybe that is part of that disconnect. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can certainly see how maybe when you sort of like step back, there are some value-based things where folks might be more aligned. But for me, it always seemed like, hey, I'm still representing the person or the family that was the victim here.
Yeah.
So we're aligned there.
And it's funny because I didn't know that you wanted to be a DA.
Yeah,
that's funny.
That's what I wanted to do when I was growing up. But yeah, law school, you're exposed to different things, and I was like, wow, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so the work that you do is heavy, and there's a lot of responsibility in representing children and their families, helping their families out. How do you carry that responsibility and that sort of emotional weight that I know as an attorney we carry, right? So how do you carry that?
As lawyers, no matter what side of the V you're on, in a lot of cases, you're representing someone because of the worst day of their life. And I believe very much, and this is a new belief for me, and it happened after my mom passed, in the power of therapy. I think that we all need to be in therapy. A lot of times, my conversations with my therapists are about my cases. Our cases can weigh us down dramatically. I hear things that I don't want to know. I have cases right now, particularly on the sex abuse side, facts that I don't want to know in my world. And I want to make sure I'm doing right by my clients. So in order to do that, I need to make sure my mind is straight. And so I think keeping ourselves healthy, both, mentally, physically, what we're eating, how we're sleeping, I think all of those things are very important in terms of making sure that we're able to do right by ourselves and our families as well as our clients.
Christa, I love that, because that is such a great way of looking at your own health, like you said, right? Physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever that may be, that it's important. I recently had a conversation with my dad a couple of weeks ago where it's like, so often we're giving so much, right? As attorneys, and depending on your personality, you might just give a lot, just right, naturally. And then it was almost this situation where my dad actually told me, it's like, dude, you also need to remember you need to love yourself, right? And he's like, I think you've forgotten some of that, and like you have to start taking care of yourself and make sure in all these like areas that are checked off, because if you do that, you'll be better, but then you'll also be able to do what you want to do and help other folks out in a better way.
Yeah,
right?
you can't help anyone if you're not right yourself. And you see a lot of times in our industry, and this is why there's things like the Other Bar and all of that, where there's lawyers that succumb to alcoholism and they're overeating, they're not working out, they're not, they're abusive to their own selves. And I think a lot of that has to do with the heavy work that we do. And then they're not taking care of themselves, which makes it even harder. Getting home from work and having a glass of wine or a drink, maybe that's, that
It's
is
a way
fine.
of sort of,
But we can't let things get out of control where we're not taking care of ourselves. And I've been at that point in my life where, I gained weight or whatever. And I know that you have to have a lot of discipline, and you have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because you can't help anybody if you're not right with yourself.
Yeah. And I love that perspective again, because it's like, it's not even superficial. It's not about anything. It's like, hey, so I can optimally be at my best for me and for my clients.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what health is about.
You can be falling asleep at your desk if you're not getting sleep at night, right?
Yeah, exactly. When you're sitting across from a family or representing a child, and you're talking to them, you're describing all of the stories and things sometimes that they share with you that's so heavy. What's going on? What's going through your mind of how do I help this person?
So, certainly when when a new case comes to me, a lot of times I'm talking to the parent first, but I immediately need to talk to the child soon thereafter, before I even decide to take a case, because the child has to want this. And so one of the first things I'm doing is making sure that the family and the child understands what litigation involves, because it's hard for them too, and they're having to relive it. And I think that one of the important aspects of our job, particularly for those of us that are doing work where our clients have experienced trauma, and most of our clients in the PI world have experienced trauma, whether it's been a car crash or they've lost someone in a wrongful death case or a medical malpractice experience. Our clients have gone through a trauma, and we need to be very focused on being trauma informed, understanding what that means, and allowing our clients to come to us in ways that, I know a lot of times people get frustrated with their clients when they don't return their calls right away, or you got to understand, like we just said, they've come to us because something really bad has happened to them, maybe the worst day of their life. And so we need to make sure that we're doing right by them, and that they understand that it's okay. But they also have to understand that there's a lot of homework involved in filing a lawsuit, and that they're going to have to relive and go through things again. Right. And so that they're prepared for that themselves. Absolutely. So I think that it's kind of that whole picture. And if the child doesn't want to do this, I tell the parent, I'm not the lawyer for them.
Right. You don't want to force that or make them go through that experience if it's not something they want to do.
Exactly.
You've obtained some amazing results, and I know you haven't given any numbers here, but like large verdicts. What do 6, 7, 8 figure outcomes? What does that mean beyond the numbers for you?
I think that verdicts, what they mean for me, but really more for the client, is that they've been heard. And a lot of times, more than the money, that's kind of the relief that, particularly in these school bullying and sex abuse cases, is, they've got administrations that never listened to them or didn't see a problem brewing. And now you have a jury of 12 people saying, oh, I hear you. And not only do I hear you, I don't believe any of their garbage. I had one case where the defense had asked for the verdict to come back at $15,000, and the jury contemplated adding on an additional $15,000 to the number that they came up with as kind of a nod to the defense to say, no. Well, or we'll give them the 15 on top of what we're going to give them. And so it was interesting. So I think that those verdicts, importantly, are jury hearing your client and believing their experience. And that's so important for healing for a lot of people.
Being heard and understood and confirmation almost of like what they went through is really what our clients are looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And we, kind of talked about, like, I think you see a lot on my media and website and all of that, that, you're not powerless.
Yeah.
That expression comes from that kind of, it was something that one of my clients had said to me after a verdict. And in a case that right before we went to trial, the defense attorney called our case a fiasco of a case and said when they get their defense verdict, this is all in an email, that when he gets his defense verdict, he's going to record it and he's going to come after my client who's now an adult and the verdict and come after her for costs and fees and everything else, and it will haunt her. And really a threatening email. It was terrible. Yes. I have it pinned to my emails, and after post-trial, I replied to everything.
Yeah.
For my motion to, my opposition to his motion to tax, it would be attached to that email right below.
Yeah.
Kind of as my reminder. But, that email made me think, is this right? Am I wrong about this case? Am I believing in the wrong client? I did believe in this client, and she's amazing. And we still keep in contact today. And she had felt powerless. And this verdict gave her so much power. These things happened to her when she was 13 years old and in the 8th grade. They didn't think that this case would go to trial because she was 18 and about to go to college at University of San Diego when we tried the case. It was literally tried in August, right before she went away to school.
Wow.
The appeal happened. She was a junior in high school when she finally got the verdict plus interest paid. She now wants to go to law school and do what I do for a living.
Oh, goodness.
So we're not powerless.
No.
And we can change the trajectory of things.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's something that I wanted to, ask you about. Yeah, I've seen that, we are not powerless in your bios and different areas where you've talked about that. And just sort of expanding on that, what does it actually look like for somebody who feels overwhelmed? That they don't know sort of where to start, what does that look like for your clients and for you as well as you're sort of navigating this?
I think every plaintiff's attorney knows that it's truly David and Goliath. I don't care if you work at the biggest, baddest plaintiff's firm in town. The insurance companies have more money than us. They have more lawyers than us. And they have a lot of power. And you see these ads on TV that vilify lawyers. They're out there in numbers greater than ever right now, coming for us. And so that really affects how jurors think ultimately about us when we walk into a courtroom. And so it is an uphill battle. And you have to appreciate that when you're going into this, that the cards are stacked against us. And it's not because what we're doing is wrong. It's because what we're doing is right. And people prefer the status quo. They would prefer, companies like, Uber and, car manufacturers like GM, they would prefer the status quo. They would prefer no change. They would prefer no lawsuits. They would prefer to put us out of business, not because they're doing better, but because they can persuade every juror and every voter out there that what we do is harmful to them. And part of that is because there's been some bad actors in our profession. But they're the exception, not the rule. And we need to remember that notoriety comes with the exceptional, not the mundane, ordinary, everyday lawyer. What we're doing every day, you and I, that's not necessarily newsworthy. It is to the people we're representing. But when someone does bad, boy, that makes front page of the LA Times.
Yeah.
And so we need to remember that things are not, we're not going in, with all the, even with the best facts. We're not going into those courtrooms with the wind at our sails. We're going in with a strong headwind, and we need to make sure that we are taking the right cases, that we're doing it for the right reasons, and that we have the right clients. And, it's okay to turn down some cases too.
Yeah. Do you see yourself as a trial lawyer or as an advocate for systemic change?
Trial lawyer.
Okay. And yet affecting, I think, and shaping law.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think
Yeah.
we all do to some extent, one judge at a time.
Yeah. One jury at a time, one
Yeah.
judge at a time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You talked about media presence, court TV, seeing you a lot, sharing your opinions and giving expert opinions on this. You also have leadership roles in various attorney bar associations like CALA. You're the president-elect. That's the largest plaintiffs membership bar in the country. You're a parliamentarian with the Consumer Advocates of California. You have leadership roles in NABOD and various other organizations. Why is involvement in these attorney associations important? And why do you do it?
When I got my law license in 2000, and I went into rooms, there were few people that looked like me. And by the way, the women that were in those rooms, if I say their first name, I bet you can tell me every one of their last names. If I say, Chris or Amy or Gretchen, you know exactly who I'm talking about. I bet you know every one of the last names I just mentioned, right?
Right.
And it's because there were so few of them, but they mentored me. And seeing them in those rooms was important, because if I would have just seen a bunch of old white dudes or even a bunch of dudes that look like you, it would have probably been very difficult for me to learn and thrive and grow. And yet the men in the room also did help me a lot, but the women were so important. And I know that being in leadership matters. It's that expression. You have to see it to be it, right? And more young women lawyers I want to see in the courtroom. We attrition out because we become mothers. Maybe our burnout is different. I don't know, more on the defense side than on the plaintiff side as well, that are women.
Sure.
So I think that it's important for people like me that have success and have the time to do it. I mean, we don't have a lot of time, none of us, and you're in leadership too, so you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's important to give back because we got a lot from the people that gave back before us.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
It's just my time to pay it forward.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, and I think that is also highlights another very this through line of Christa is that it's service above self, and how is it that how do you balance being a mother, a trial attorney, with the responsibilities of everything that you do as an attorney representing individuals?
So that saying, service above self, is a motto of Rotary International. And when I first started dating my husband, he was a member of Rotary, and then I ended up joining as well and doing volunteer work, whether it's through Rotary or the YMCA or the other things that we do. People joke, maybe I need to say yes less, or does Christa know how to say no?
Yeah.
But doing that volunteer work really taught me about that Rotary value of service above self, and I think that it applies to the practice of law.
Yeah.
One of the other things that within Rotary is a 4-way test. And you ask yourselves in all things that, as Rotarians, all things that we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And is it beneficial to all concerned? And if it checks those boxes, then it is a good and right thing to do. And so if it's not the truth, if it doesn't build goodwill, if it isn't fair to all concerned, if it's not beneficial, then why are you doing it? So I think that through service to others, I've learned kind of maybe what's right and wrong, even in the practice of law.
Yeah.
Is it the truth? And you should ask yourself in those cases, those things in cases you take. A lawyer told me once, I was convinced it was a really good men-mal case. And this lawyer was a JDMD.
Okay.
And I called him about the case. And he's like, don't take the case, Christa. He said, someone might take the case and they might make a lot of money on the case. He said, but you need to learn that it's okay to turn down a case. Even if someone else takes the case and makes a lot of money on it. You regret cases you take, but you should never regret the cases that you don't.
Oh.
So.
I love that. Yeah, no, I love that. And this idea of, truth, goodwill is beneficial to all. What was the other?
Is it the truth?
Fair.
Fair, yeah.
Yeah. That's one that's going to stick with me. Thank you for that.
There you go. Look up, you can just Google rotary four-way test.
Four-way test, yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
And I've seen other organizations with something similar to Service Above Self. There's a group of former military folks that called Team Rubicon that say their motto is service before self, which I thought that's pretty cool too.
Yeah.
Kind of play on that.
Yeah. All right. So I want to shift gears a little bit here as we're sort of coming to a close, a little bit of a rapid fire, if you will. Take as much time as you want answering them. But what's the biggest misconception that people have about trial lawyers?
They were greedy.
That's a good one.
Most of us are big-hearted, generous, crazy generous people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. What's one of the hardest cases for you, maybe, that you had emotionally?
I think I'm having it right now. I have a case right now that it's a sex abuse case. It's pretty rough. Pretty rough. Young girl and band coach.
Oh,
bad. And then, of course, people are saying things publicly about her, like, well, she wanted it. She liked it.
I literally had that when I was in middle school. Yeah, teacher was arrested. Was in prison for a long time.
It's hard. Some of these cases are just really hard, but they make you want to fight more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Was there ever a moment when you thought, this is exactly why I do what I do?
Yeah. When I got that verdict after that guy told me my case was fiasco of a case.
Yeah.
And it was funny because we could hear the walls in the Van Nuys courthouse are really thin between the courtroom and the jury room. And we could hear the jurors laughing in there. I'm like, well, they really like each other. And someone told me a jury gets along usually as a generous jury. At some point during the deliberations, I told Ellery, I'm like, I think we're going to lose. And I'm so sorry. And we did everything we could. I just was so scared and doubted myself. And then that verdict came back and I'm like, what's the fiasco now, Bob?
Reply all.
I was like, this is why I do what I do. I'm good at it too.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank God.
Yeah. Those are always the best too, because it's almost like you'd already resolved a certain, defeat, right? And you're already there from the jaws of defeat.
I know. I don't know why it felt that way. I think the jurors asked a question that was a little weird.
Yeah.
And I overthought it.
No, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could go back and talk to your younger self, what would you tell her?
God, so many things. It's okay to wear heels, even if you're taller than the boys.
There you go. That's an important one. That's a big one. Yeah.
Because sometimes that power is a good thing. Don't care what people are saying about you when you're not in the room or behind your back, because the people that are talking behind your back are behind you.
Oof.
Right? They are.
I love that. Clip that.
And, just generally speaking, if people are going to doubt you or, question why you're doing something. But if you have a purpose, let that purpose drive you and just forget about everything else. Because I think that a lot of times young people in particular can get bogged down about what other people think about them. And I think that's kind of the overall arch of what I would say to my younger self is don't worry about what other people think about you. Just keep doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
And look good while you're doing it.
There you go. In style. I love it. And so with that, I just sort of want to bring it back to where we started. If there's a parent listening right now, and they feel like the system has failed their child, if there's a young child, a teenager out there who feels that they've been let down by the system, what would you want them to hear from you today?
That your voice matters and use it. Make sure that you are, and use it in writing. But there's resources that schools provide, even the ones that are failing. Find them and make sure you speak up. Don't hold it back. Things won't change because of time. Things only change because people force change. And I think that's true across the board.
Absolutely.
Nothing's ever changed because we sat quiet.
No, we have to speak up. We have to take action. We have to do something.
We have the right to vote if
Yeah.
women before me didn't speak up.
Yeah.
Right?
And it requires so much bravery as well.
And it does for parents and kids. And it does require bravery. And it's okay to be a snitch. Because,
And it's not snitching, I guess.
And it's not snitching. Yeah, I mean, these kids that are doing this, they're a lot of times they're modeling bad behavior at home. They're children that themselves have gone through something. Remember to be compassionate with them as well. Particularly like when you see bad behavior from younger kids, particularly stuff that's sexual in nature, I worry about what that child is going through at home. So remember to have compassion for the kids that are doing this as well, because there's something wrong with them as well, and they need help.
It's a beautiful sort of balancing reminder.
Yeah.
Well, Christa, thank you so much for. This has been a very powerful conversation. I think that has also helped folks understand sort of where this area of the law sort of is. Thank you so much for sharing your heart, your ideas, your thoughts, and your work really is a reminder that even in those moments where we feel powerless, there is still a path forward.
Yep, there is. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I always love chatting with you.
Anytime that I get it, no matter where we're at. So thank you. And to our listeners, thank you so much for hanging out with us for another hour of Art of Purpose. Please share this episode with your friends, family. I think this is something that's important for for parents, for students, for anyone in any position in life, because we need folks like Christa to create a safe environment, a safe place for us, and have someone to talk to as well. So please share this. Looking forward to our next episode as well, and we will see you then.